Lawrence Kasdan first came to our attention in 1981 with his film Body Heat. Since then, he has directed and written such films as The Big Chill and Grand Canyon. After a 4-year break from directing, his latest film, Mumford, opens on September 24th. Pleased to have Lawrence Kasdan on this program. Welcome back.
Thank you, Charlie.
How have you been?
Very good, very good.
Why did you take off so much time?
You know, I'm not sure it was intentional. You know, I had made 2 movies back-to-back, Wide Open French Kiss, and right. I needed a little break. And then I worked for a while on a movie that I didn't make. It's actually since 1977. It's the first screenplay I've written that I haven't made.
Because
and it was
you couldn't get backing, or because it wasn't right?
I actually had the backing, but it was a big, expensive movie, and it required 2 movie stars. And right in the middle of this difficult process of getting it up, Joe Roth was going to make it at Disney, but I sort of I thought maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. It was playing into everything that I worry about in Hollywood. It was very expensive. You're sort of at the mercy of your casting. And I sort of put it aside. I don't know if I'll ever go back to it or not. And I sat down and I wrote Mumford, and I thought, this is what I enjoyed doing.
It's a small, quality film with an interesting storyline.
I hope so.
And unknown actors, for the most part, except cameo roles.
People who are just coming up, that's right.
Or less known.
That's right.
What's wrong with Hollywood, you said? I mean, big movies that are dependent on stars that can bring in, because they're making so much money, a huge box office the first weekend. That's one problem.
It's all about the first weekends. It's too bad, you know. That's when we released The Big Chill in 1983. It did $3.5 million in its first weekend. The second weekend, it did about $3.6 million. And then it played for 6 months, you know, and it made a lot of money eventually. Yeah, it was very nice, because what happens is the audience can then discover a movie, and you're not completely at the mercy of the advertising budget. You know,
and how about Silverado?
Silverado, you know, the same kind of atmosphere, better, you know, atmosphere, you know, different kind of fate for the movie, but actually did better the second weekend, too.
The great story about those two, as everybody knows, is that Kevin Costner, as I remember, was in Big Chill and was edited out.
That's right. I cut out the entire sequence that Kevin was in.
And he was terrific in it, everybody says.
He was really good, very charismatic. But a good thing came out of it, which is that my brother and I wrote a part for him in Silverado.
That's what I know, yeah.
It was very important to his career, that part, and it's just a fun part, and he's quite lively.
Does he, I've forgotten Silverado, but I think somehow I remember there was a scene where he drops off the back of the top of a house onto a horse.
That's right. There's quite a bit of running, jumping, and falling down, as we say, but he's totally charming in that movie.
Did you always want to make a Western?
Yes, and I've made 2, and I would make more if I could, because I love being out there. You know, once you go out to make a Western, you know, except for the trucks that you've got there, it looks pretty much the same as it did in 1865, and it's pretty stimulating stuff.
Where do you make them, Arizona?
I made both of mine in New Mexico, around Santa Fe, and all around Santa Fe, and that is a gorgeous area of the country, and the light is unlike anywhere else in the country.
Back to Hollywood. What else is wrong, other than you got to pay a lot of money to people who will guarantee? You have to play it safe now because there's so much money at stake, and therefore you can't be quiet and you can't be...
Well, the problem is that all movies are sold through 30-second television commercials. There's really nothing else matters, not the trailer, not the print, nothing.
So if you can't put it in 30 seconds, you can't sell it.
Well, that doesn't encourage, you know, very complex material, you know, and it doesn't encourage finding new stars, because if you only have 30 seconds, you want to recognize the face in the commercial, and you want to understand the concept of the movie very quickly. That's too bad. It has a negative effect on the movies that are green-lighted, you know, to be put into that production line.
Yeah, I never understood, with due great respect for you, the French Kiss.
Yes.
Why did you want to make that? Because you want to go to Paris?
I think that was part of it.
I thought so.
The other thing is that Meg Ryan, whose project it was, she's fabulous and a good friend. And I wanted to work with Meg. I had just worked with her husband, Dennis Quaid, and Meg and I were very close. And Kevin Kline, I thought, would be very funny in that movie. You know, I don't always, you know, the way I think these careers work is you know, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And, you know, I try not to judge them later and rethink them, because the fact is you do what seems right then, and, you know, you go with it. Try to live in that moment, you know.
But after writing for Lucas and Spielberg, and then moving on to make your own movies, which were, like, The Big Chill's a classic.
Thank you.
Probably did better, I don't know, did it do as I mean, I can imagine it's had a huge run in terms of aftermarket, whatever it is.
Oh, it continues to this day. The DVD came out last year and sold a lot of copies and continues to sell. It is, I'm very happy to say, it's sort of perennial.
Yeah, and so you all of a sudden have a reputation right then. Not only can you write, but you can direct.
Right.
And then Grand Canyon and Accidental Tourist got some good marks from people. Yeah.
Right.
Do you come to some conclusion, look, this is a great business to be in.
Yes.
I'm happy that I can write and direct.
Yes.
You know, but at some point you got to realize, as you and big stars have to realize, and everybody, and even studios, especially studios, everything's not going to be a hit.
Well,
and everything's not going to be.
Absolutely. That's why I think there are a couple measures of a career that I'm interested in. One is stamina. You know, can you have a 20-year career, a 30-year career, and continue to get the money to make these movies? Because that's really the challenge each time. Is someone going to fund your movie? That's a very expensive art form. The other standard that interests me is the longevity of the art itself. You know, does it stand the test of time? Can you go back and look at Body Heat now and feel good about it? And that's really what I'm sort of aiming at.
And when you look at Body Heat, what do you think?
I think
you wrote that but didn't direct it.
No, I directed it.
You directed it.
That was the first movie I directed.
Yeah.
And
that was first?
Yeah, that was the first.
Because that made a killing.
It was a very important movie for me and for Bill Hurt and Kathleen Turner, and Ted Danson's in that movie. Yeah. He's in Mumford. It was a very exciting experience for me. I had been thinking about directing for 15 years before I got a chance to do it, and it was very satisfying to have it be received so well.
Who was in it now? It was Ted Danson?
Ted Danson, William Hurt,
right,
Kathleen Turner.
I remember Kathleen.
Yeah.
It was set in Florida? Where was it set?
It was set in Florida. We were supposed to do it in New Jersey, but there was an actors' strike that year and it became winter, and we needed better weather than that, so we did it in Florida. In fact, they just tore down the main house from that movie last year.
Was Richard Crenna in this too?
Richard Crenna plays the bad husband. He's a wonderful man.
And that gave you an opportunity to come back and play again.
That's the thing. When you make your first movie, you have to hit some sort of mark, you know, in order to get that second movie. And luckily, Body Heat did that for me. It made it possible for me to go on.
Did you have anything to do with Bodyguard?
Well, I wrote it. That was the first script I ever...
I was thinking about Bodyguard when you said Body Heat there for a moment.
Right. No, I wrote that in 1975, actually, 25 years ago, and it didn't get made until 1992. And
75 to 92.
Yeah. They wanted me to direct it in that time, but I didn't want to. I was sort of burned out on it. And eventually I produced it with Kevin Costner and Jim Wilson, and we hired another man to direct it. And it was an enormous success, somewhat to my surprise, yes.
Huge.
Big, yeah, huge.
Yeah. And had a best-selling album and everything else.
Yeah, well, that had a lot to do with it. I think Whitney was wonderful, and she had a big hit off it. But that story, it was funny, all over the world, you know, and Asia and Europe. People related to that, something about him being willing to sacrifice himself for this woman, you know, it had a lot of pull.
Yeah. Which brings me to this Mumford.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the idea come from? Obviously, from that trailer, we know this is a story of a psychologist goes to a small town, and he all of a sudden becomes a hit shrink.
That's right.
You know, everybody's coming to him for their domestic or behavioral problems.
Yes.
And then he has a big secret. His big secret is he ain't got no credentials.
That's right. And I think that's where it really started for me. You know, all my life, I've been a pretty good listener. And it's amazing if you're good listening. People, as you know, people will tell you anything.
Tell me about it.
And if you do the rare thing in our world, which is ask the follow-up question, then the gates just open. Because almost no, you know, in most of our interactions in life, it's like, how you doing? You say, terrible. They say, oh, great, nice to see you. And they move on. So the follow-up question really opens the floodgates. And it just occurred to me, what if a guy had no credentials, but he was a very good listener, very empathetic, and had a lot of common sense? You know, how far could he get in terms of helping people, you know? Because even credentialed people sometimes come up empty. I think everybody's a little skeptical about psychology.
Anybody who does what I do,
yes,
and you being a good listener will know this, it is this notion, if you stop long enough,
yes,
and are not scared of the gap, somebody will rush in
to
fill it.
Because there's so few moments like that in our lives today. You know, essentially, we wake up and we're assaulted constantly. And even in our interaction with the people that we work with and see every day, everything is speeded up. You know, so if you can create a moment of respite, you know, a little serenity for someone to operate in, it's amazing what happens to them.
This movie, you cast Dean as the lead.
Yes, Lauren Dean.
Not well known, but
No.
good actor.
Yes, well, I wanted someone that the audience didn't know, you know, because I wanted the audience to be a little mystified by this guy, the same way his patients are.
And at what point in the movie do you let them know the secret?
Around the middle of the movie, because I think it's important, but the surprise doesn't matter to me. Well, because before that, you've seen that this guy is unconventional and occasionally inappropriate.
All right, take a look at this scene. This is when Mumford takes his patient, Sophie, who's played by Hope Davis, suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome, out for a walk, and they run into her disapproving mother. Here it is. What?
I guess we can't say.
Yeah, exactly. What's the cost? What does it cost you to make the film like
that? It cost $28.7 $28 million, yeah, which is relatively cheap by today's standards. It's unfortunate that, you know, any regular Hollywood movie is going to cost about that, and that's without anyone taking big money, and, you know, there were no big salaries, and I deferred a lot of money, and even so, it cost that much money to make a Hollywood film.
You chose this one because you want to make a small film, because you want to do something, a story that you liked?
I did. You know, I've had my best luck writing about the things that interest me most, you know, and I've turned down a lot of movies that, you know, have gone on to do very well, but I didn't relate to the material in a way, and I sort of don't know how to handle those movies.
What does this have to do for you to be a success? I mean, critics love it, some people go see it, it breaks even, it makes a lot of money. What would...
You know, that's the question that I think everybody who does this has to ask himself all the time, Charlie, which is, what's good enough? You know, it's such a gift, as you know, to be able to do work you love and actually make a living at it. I mean, a lot of people don't do that, and so they have to find all their pleasure outside of their work. But we spend the bulk of our time doing the work, and I do. And the fact that I love my work seems to me a gift in itself. So everything else seems to me to be gravy. You know, if the thing is well received, I love it. You know, if people hate it, I don't like it. But the truth is, I've done what I wanted. I've sort of gotten what I want out of it before it even comes out.
So you were satisfied by Accidental Tourist and Grand Canyon, which got great reviews, good performances by Danny and Glover and others.
Yes. I was very satisfied by those things. And, you know, of course, Accidental Tourist was named Best Picture of the Year by the New York Film Critics. So you can't ask for much more than that. So when you get to do the work you want and somebody notices, it's pretty satisfying.
Yeah. Hollywood.
Yes.
Yeah. You've got changes at Warner Brothers. Will that make a difference?
It always does, because these studios, what the studios are willing to do is very much dependent on the man in charge. And Terry Semel and Bob Daly, who I worked with several times and were wonderful executives at Warner Brothers, they were interested in a certain kind of movie. Now, Alan Horn has come in to take over that position. I know him very well, and he is very supportive of a different kind of movie.
What's the difference?
I think that, you know, the Terry and Bob era at Warner Brothers had a lot to do with a certain number of movie stars, a certain kind of picture, you know, very glossy, very glamorous, and good. I mean, they made some of my favorite pictures there, and including a couple with me. But I think Alan will be interested in a slightly wider variety and not necessarily the same group of stars.
Joe Roth at Disney.
Well, Joe and I have a long relationship. He made Grand Canyon. Everybody made out all right on Grand Canyon, and he made this movie, Mumford. And for me, he is the best executive in Hollywood, partially because...
Lots of people tell me that.
Well, partially, you know, he used to be a movie director. And when you tell Joe Roth the problem, he understands it perfectly, you know, and there's very little discussion about it. And I've had amazing conversations with him where I've been in trouble, and I've said to him, you know, I need more money for this, and we make some sort of new arrangement about, you know, my compensation and what he'll give me in return. In 5 minutes, no lawyers, no agents or anything. He's never broken his word to me, and I've tried to be that way with him.
If you were advising someone coming to you saying, man, I want to make films. I love movies. Yes. I love movies.
Yes.
I want to make films. And not saying I want to be, just want to make films.
I don't want to be famous.
Or whatever they say. Yeah, it's not that I want to make a lot of money. It's not that I want to hang out with stars. It's not that I want to be glamorous. I just want to make movies. That's what I want to. Some people want to paint. Some people want to sculpt. I want to make movies.
Yes.
Would you tell them what? Would you? I mean, forget.
It's never been easier, actually, because the equipment has gotten. You can actually shoot on digital tape, and it's very close. In fact, movies are going to go over from celluloid to digital very quickly.
And
sooner.
the editing will be 10 times easier.
It'll be easier, and you know, we've never been able to duplicate, and still to this day can't quite duplicate the look of celluloid, that is light going through plastic, that movies have, that's different from television, say, you know, but we're getting very close with digital. And so it's never been easier to make something. You know, it doesn't cost anything. You can make Blair Witch for $30,000 if you want.
Was that made on digital?
No.
No,
but there's a lot of videotape in that movie that's transferred to film. But what the problem is always going to remain the same, which is to come up with a story, to come up with characters that the audience can relate to. That has nothing to do with money or availability of equipment. So I would say to someone who really wants to make a movie, get some background in life, you know, find out something about science and history and literature and philosophy, and bring those things to movies, and not just what you've seen on TV.
And learn how to communicate, learn how to tell a story, learn how to write a line, learn how to, something of the magic of what causes someone to want to listen to what another person says. That's
right. Read good books and watch good movies and try to learn something, you know, and be observant and compassionate toward your fellow man. No one ever talks about that anymore, but the truth is that the really great artists, even if they've had personally troubled lives, tend to be compassionate about humanity, you know.
Well said. Lawrence Kasdan, director, writer, producer. Mumford by Touchstone Pictures opens nationally on September 24th. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Troy.
And thank you for joining us. See you next time.